career of Eddie Parks. He and I were just talking about Eddie a couple of moments ago, but that's not why he's here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you back with us here today.
Thanks.
We're talking Fair Districts PA, and just to explain to people, it's a statewide organization, and the Indiana County angle is you and Sid Rieger basically have been the leaders of this movement here in Indiana County.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and you have another event coming up.
Yes, next Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock at Homer City Library. I'm going to be doing a talk on gerrymandering problems and solutions, trying to keep people up to date on what's been happening on the whole front with the state legislature.
Mm-hmm. If you need my son to come and tell people who Elbridge Gary was, we visited his grave last year.
Oh, really?
In the Congressional Cemetery in D.C.
Was the gravestone shaped like a salamander?
No.
No.
I don't recall seeing that, but that was the specific reason we went there, was because he wanted to see Elbridge Gary's grave.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't care about J. Edgar Hoover's or anybody else who's buried there.
Mm-hmm.
But this event coming up on Tuesday is, how many of these have you held?
Oh, I can't even count. I think we've done a dozen.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And what has been the reception to them?
In many cases, people have said, thank you, I understand the issue so much better now. Mm-hmm. Because it is a confusing issue. Yeah, it really is. And as a matter of fact, it's a set of confusing issues, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
The events which have occurred over the past 5 months are enough to make your head spin, and I think a lot of people are confused. Mm-hmm. So I came here today to maybe try to just get a brief clarification of all of that out and try to help people to come to terms with where we are right now with the issue. Mm-hmm. As you know, 5 months ago, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania issued a ruling on a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was basically to throw out the congressional maps which had been drawn in 2011, which had been cited as one of the three most gerrymandered state maps in the Union. Mm-hmm. That lawsuit was successful in getting those maps thrown out, much to the delight of one side of the political spectrum. On the other side of the political spectrum, the lawsuit was successful in sparking calls for the impeachment of the Supreme Court justices and appeals to the United States Supreme Court, which were unsuccessful. In other words, it was a very divisive issue all around. And if you look into the future, just on the basis of that lawsuit, it's hard to see how Pennsylvanians can come together on this issue.
Yeah.
At the same time, and going through this whole time, on a separate track, Fair Districts PA was sponsoring bills which had been brought to the Pennsylvania legislature in both houses by bipartisan groups of legislators. And these bills, which have nothing to do with the lawsuit, were to create a permanent fix, which hopefully would not be a win-lose, but a win-win for Pennsylvanians. And that permanent fix would take the form of a Pennsylvania constitutional amendment, an amendment to the PA Constitution, that would create an independent commission to draw districts in future cycles of this. We will reach our next cycle in 2020, in the year or two following our 2020 census, as we do every decade. So the laws to do this would have to, at least one of them would have to successfully get passed, and that would be the first leg in a 3-year process to create this amendment. Yeah. The end of the process would be a public referendum where the people of Pennsylvania would vote. So I think the first thing I want to really stress is that these bills, it's Senate Bill 22 and House Bill 722, have nothing to do with the whole action of the lawsuit, which was a temporary fix. Mm-hmm. And what was done as a result of the lawsuit will end in 2020.
You said a couple of moments ago something that I thought was pretty instructive on the issue, and that is that people do wonder if there is an actual solution for Pennsylvania.
Well, in my belief, this is the best. Mm-hmm. Right now, and I've spoken with both of our state legislators here in Indiana, had very cordial and constructive talks with them. It's more about the details, that they are both, if not outright committed to support of these particular bills. They are on with the idea of the independent commission, of moving this to a neutral body to get the work of redistricting done, which I think is where a lot of people in the legislature are.
Yeah.
When we spoke to you last, sometime in, I don't remember, March, these bills were grinding their way through the committee process. Guess what? Today they're grinding their way through the committee process.
Sure.
I think it was Otto von Bismarck, the German chancellor in the 1890s, who said one should never observe legislation or sausage being made. And this certainly fits that description.
In that case as well, one of the things that we need to understand is that changing the Pennsylvania Constitution is a very difficult process. So this is not the matter of just passing a bill and
Correct.
it becoming law.
The bill would have, whatever bill comes out of this, it would come out of a kind of a discussion of both of the bills. And of course, it would ping-pong back and forth between the houses, and it would wind up, being one bill. And that would go forward and have to be passed again next year. And then in the third year out, it would then go to the people of Pennsylvania in a public referendum, and they would get to vote on it.
And we can do the math, and we can determine that already you're past the year 2020.
Right.
Which timeliness
it's
becomes a big factor.
Well, time is a huge factor because the current legislative session ends June 30th. And if something isn't passed by June 30th, we're behind.
So that all becomes a part of the discussion on Tuesday at Homer Center.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. When we talk about redistricting, another issue folks need to understand is we're not just talking about congressional, we're talking about state legislative maps as well.
State legislative maps, which were not touched by the lawsuit, by the way. They're still in effect as they had been.
Yeah.
Did you know, for example, that in Indiana County we have 5 different legislators?
Well, the election was yesterday, so yes, we do know that.
We do know that. Well, the primary elections were yesterday.
Yeah.
But depending on where you live, there are all these different people. Pennsylvania Constitution is pretty explicit in saying that if at all possible, county boundaries, geographic boundaries should be kept intact by the legislative maps. Obviously, this has not been done. A practical illustration, I guess, is the way to put it. The new 15th Congressional District, of which we are now part of a member, goes from here all the way to the New York border, heading northbound from here. Right.
Which is why Representative Reed, that's the reason he cited for not going forward with a congressional race, because if he's having to go to the New York border, he's obviously away from his family for a good portion with all of the counties. One of the issues with congressional redistricting is Pennsylvania most likely is going to lose another seat.
That's right, because of population changes.
With the next census, which stretches the districts even further. And so Pennsylvania being a large geographic, a large amount of area, that stretches our lawmakers to really, really unreasonably
right. And not only is it a large geographic area, it's a large geographic area with huge population concentrations in specifically small areas of the state. So those areas, like obviously Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, are going to be a hodgepodge of different districts, while the rural districts will cover hundreds and hundreds of miles in either direction.
Yeah.
And I think I agree. Representative Reed said to me some weeks ago when we met with him that he felt that particular district, our now new district, was a mistake because Indiana County doesn't really belong as a community of common interests with all of those northern counties, that we're not one of those, and I tend to agree with that. But it's a difficult job. But that sausage has got to come out of the tube at some point. Right?
Which really does sort of indicate the need for a commission such as the one you are discussing.
Right.
Representative Reed introduced his own idea, which is a commission-based thing. Of course, his ideas and yours basically come down to how is that commission comprised?
Right.
How is it made up?
Right.
So when people come to this meeting on Tuesday at Homer Center, what are some of the things that they're I'm sure you're seeking their input as well as providing information to them.
We try to make it very interactive, and I would welcome anyone to speak. We had a long discussion On May 9th, when I spoke to the League of Women Voters, Sid and I spoke actually to the League of Women Voters, and about half of our presentation was back and forth with the audience, and I would welcome that. If people want to come down and talk, ask questions, talk about their ideas. I think what I'm seeing now is this slow sort of turn towards people being very opposed to the whole idea, to now people being largely in sync with the idea of an independent commission that takes the redistricting process out of the hands of elected officials and puts it into the hands of an independent commission. Now the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
How do we select this commission? And, of course, that's part of the sausage. That's the debate that needs to be had, and it needs to be had now before June 30th. So.
Yeah. So this meeting is coming up next Tuesday at Homer Center. At the time
Homer
again?
City Library,
Homer
7
Library.
p.m.
Homer City Library at 7 p.m.
May 22nd, Tuesday evening, yes.
Are there others on the calendar yet?
We've got a few kind of in the works, but they're not solidified yet.
Okay.
So
All right.
as it gets closer to June 30th, I think this is going to become a hotter and hotter issue. And I would like to say, one of the things that I said to the League of Women Voters is that the reason we're in this situation now, the reason we are in this fix, is because, by and large, all of us were asleep at the wheel going back to the last time of redistricting, 2010, 2011. It's an issue which just doesn't capture the public imagination the way candidates and ideologies and issues do. But nonetheless, it has a huge impact on all of those things.
Well, it really does.
And
how many years ago was it that the congressional district here was split down the middle of Philadelphia Street?
Right.
On the north side
That's
was
right.
was who was it? Joe Coulter, and on
Right.
on the south side it was John Murtha.
That's correct. So depending on which side of Main Street you lived on, you had a different congressperson. But
7 p.m. Tuesday, Homer City Library.
that is correct. I'd love to see as many people there as possible.
Don't need to call ahead and sign up. Just show.
Just show up.
Just show. Stanley, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160.